Thank you so much for joining. I'm Sudhir Pandey. I welcome you to Ahmedabad University and to the conversation series. Those who know it already, those who are online and offline, both welcome again. This series is one of the main events at Amrit Modi School of Management, where we have been inviting people initially online because that was the time when it was COVID and everybody was available online. But this year onwards, after a gap of 4 or 5 months, we decided to hold this as a hybrid event where we'll invite the guests to the campus so that you get a chance to interact with people. People can see you, ask questions. And those who are online, not here, they can join on Zoom. So that's why we have kept it hybrid. And it is a great opportunity for all of us. So without delay, let me introduce Harish Mehta. And it is such a kind of huge introduction that it took some time for me to kind of cut it down and put the main points. And because we have been circulating this announcement, most of you know already, but it is a must for me to read it out. We all know he's a doyen of Indian IT. He is known to be the driving force behind back. He was elected as the first chairman of NASSCOM and continues to be the convener of NASSCOM's Chairman Council. He's also the award-winning author of the 2022 national bestseller, The Maverick Effect, which is there outside. I request you to buy and browse it and read it. It is a very fine piece of storytelling. Through NASSCOM, he has played an instrumental role in building an independent, neutral, and trustworthy and consistent-driven platform where diverse stakeholders and fierce competitors could come together and harness the true potential of Indian IT industry, which is well known. He also brought Silicon Valley's the Indus Entrepreneur or TIE to India in 1999 to promote innovation-driven entrepreneurship. Beyond his groundbreaking contribution to NASSCOM, his entrepreneurial spirit is embodied by the Onward group of companies. Under his guidance, the company has flourished as a global engineering and analytics service organization. He was the founding member of the Infinity Ventures Fund, India's first corporatized venture fund in 2000, and promoted the Indian Angel Network in Mumbai, one of the largest angel networks in the world. In IT and entrepreneurship, he is a beacon of inspiration, strategic visionary, and catalyst for growth. His relentless pursuit of excellence, coupled with his unwavering commitment to transforming the Indian IT landscape, has been instrumental. I mean, it has been really remarkable. He is also, because he's done so much, it goes without saying that he's one of the most influential leaders that we have. His remarkable journey is a testament to the transformative power of passion and the steed for belief that technology and collaboration can change the world. It has already changed a lot. So these are the guys who did this. It'll be a format, as you know, will be in the conversation, and Professor Ravi Miglani, who is a professor of practice and the director of executive education at Ahmedabad University, he will be in conversation with him. The format will go like this. They both will converse for the next 55 minutes. After that, we'll invite questions. So those who are on Zoom and otherwise, while you listen to the conversation, if you have anything, just keep it there. At the end of the conversation, somewhere around, I think 6:30 p.m., we will open this for discussion and your questions. So it is a pleasure to have you, sir, here at Ahmedabad University. We are very fortunate to have you. And I request Professor Ravi Miglani to take it forward.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your generous words.
Thank you, Sudhir. And is this fine working? You can hear us? Yeah. Thank you, Sudhir. And after that powerful introduction to our esteemed guest, Harish Mehta, I don't know what to ask you because you know everything. So my questions are a bit irrelevant. I'm sure you can talk on this topic for hours without me asking a single question. But before we get to what you did and what is NASSCOM and how did you bring it all up together, so this is the book that started our conversation, and the book is outside this hall for anyone who wants to buy. Mr. Mehta has agreed to be at the desk after the conversation to sign books for you. If you want to buy books, you will personalize it for them. So before we get to the serious stuff and all the big names like NASSCOM, tell us about, welcome to Ahmedabad. and congratulations on this book. I keep seeing this book being nominated for all kinds of awards, including recently I saw it's being nominated for the Bangalore BizLit Festival Best Business Book Award and so on. So congratulations on that. And welcome to Ahmedabad. Coming to Ahmedabad, since we are here, and I'm sure you've been coming here all your life, anything you have to say about Ahmedabad? We are in presence of 200 Ahmedabadis. So be polite, but tell us what do you like about Ahmedabad?
I'm a Gujarati. So to me, Ahmedabad is a second home.
Yeah.
So I always enjoy coming here and listening to specifically the Gujarati that I hear from the friends and everybody. They speak so different Gujarati, frankly. But it's very sweet when you listen to them. So that is definitely one of the attraction, I would say, of listening to the Gujarati language in a very different way.
Yeah.
Apart from all the beauty of Ahmedabad in terms of architecturally,
Yes.
way advanced compared to any other city. Your campus was so impressive. He just took me around. Very impressive campus. So all of you are very lucky to be part of such an university.
Great. Yes, I've been in Ahmedabad for 4 years and I just about scratched the surface. There's so much to see in Ahmedabad, so much history, so much culture. We've been trying to discover it, but it'll take years for us to discover all that Ahmedabad has to offer. At your own personal risk, you want to share anything you don't like about Ahmedabad?
I think what I don't like is Ahmedabad has not become IT destination. In spite of entrepreneurship, we can say, I don't know, whatever you want to compute is the highest in Gujarat and such. And Gujarat has missed the IT wave. And there are a number of stories behind it. Just to give one story here, I had met Mr. Keshubhai Patel, I don't know, maybe 25 years back. And we came in, we said, Keshubhai, you should introduce English language. And he didn't understand what we were trying to say. And I said, security officer will have to use gadgets which will require knowledge of English. So you need to find ways to start. There's a starting point for IT industry to take birth in Gujarat. So he listened to us. Then he said, how much land you require? I said, land? Our industry can grow vertically. We don't need any land. Oh, you don't want land? We said, no. He was a bit surprised. Here is one of the very few business person group coming and not asking for land. Because every delegation from anywhere in the world or coming and meeting him was asking for basically land and some money, some incentives. And here we were. He said, we want no incentives. We just want you to promote English language and the IT as a subject. Then he says, but Dhirubhai, Jamnagar ma 25,000 lagade se. Tame ketla? We are not here to talk about money. Yeah. But he didn't get the concept of IT, services as a business model.
Yeah.
And like today, if you see in Jamnagar, it may have created 5,000 jobs. If IT industry was given the focus, it would have created maybe 1 million jobs in Gujarat. Very different value addition that our industry could have brought in. So that is not Ahmedabad in general, but in generally about Gujarat not able to leverage the IT revolution that took place 30 years back in India.
Yeah, I mean, Ahmedabad was very well.
I'll be very free to talk whatever, so don't.
Ahmedabad was very well placed to become the IT hub of the country, but Bangalore and Hyderabad and those cities and those states had better political environment. And also probably, and I'm talking as an outsider, I'm not a Gujarati, but I think Gujarati culture is a very trading culture and trading of physical goods. So IT being a software and an intangible good was probably not understood by the Gujarati business.
I'll do another story here. When Mr. Narendra Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat, again, we had met him as a delegation at his home in Gandhinagar. And he asked the same question, why Gujarat is not an IT destination? So one of us said there is prohibition. But we said, no, if prohibition was the reason, then Punjab should have become IT destination, and Punjab is not. Then someone said English language. So again, we told, if English was the reason, Kerala would have become IT destination. So what is the reason? My answer to him was that we are not business people in the services game. As you just said, Gujaratis are in trading and Gujarat, most of them are very aggressively going after, I would say, land-driven business projects or capital-intensive projects. So he said, so what? I said, what happens is in a services business, you employ people. Now, in that time, Gujarat, large number of small and medium companies were suffering because of the labor strikes or misbehavior by the labor. So if you, as an entrepreneur, wants to start an IT business, your parents, your uncle, because again, in software services, nobody gives you money. You have to start bootstrap yourself. And so normally you start with your uncles and others, friends giving you money to get started. Now, in this case, everybody will ask you, uncle, you're taking 20 engineers, but how will you pay the salary next year? They will demand more increment and then this year after year after year. Why do you want to be in such a business? Nobody could foresee that export is a very different ball game versus domestic. And of course, labor problem was definitely very much in their mind. So we told Modi ji at that time that unless you change that mindset of entrepreneurship, where they become services driven, then industry will take birth.
Yeah. Exactly. So we've been throwing this word NASSCOM around for a while. So before you get to NASSCOM and how it came together in the late 1980s and how software services industry grew from there to now. Before that journey, maybe a few minutes about your journey, which is very inspirational for our young students here. You were born in Amreli, I believe, in Gujarat. So from Amreli to Connecticut and back to Mumbai, and how did that happen?
I did my engineering from College Engineering Pune. Went to USA to do masters in electrical engineering. My roommate was one Sardar who had just graduated doing his masters in computer science. He said, "Pagal ho gaya kya? Abhi electrical karte ho? Abhi to computer ka zamana aa raha hai." Now in India, nobody knew what computer was. In my college, no one knew. I think we had just seen one punch card with a whole somebody saying that's information. That's all we knew about computers. I don't know how many of you have seen punch card. Has anyone of you seen punch card? No, okay. So maybe not easy to relate to, but our generation would relate very.
In our generation, a computer used to occupy a room.
Massive, yeah, this.
A computer was not in our pocket. Our computer took one whole room for one computer.
That's right. So we call it a super computer compared to what we were using as a computer for our work. Sorry, where were we? We were talking about.
Yeah. So you went there.
So I went to do my master's. So then I looked around and I found, okay, it makes sense what he is saying. So I switched to computer science. Now, after finishing my computer science, I couldn't find a job because the Vietnam War was on full swing and major recession in the USA. So I ended up as a software programmer with an insurance company. And I was writing programs in COBOL. Now, I don't know how many of you know in the COBOL language. It's an English type language. The ChatGPT prompt engineering is very similar to COBOL language from that perspective. So now, here is a master, and there was a saying in those days, okay, you can teach a monkey to do programming in COBOL by teaching the monkey for 1 week of COBOL training. And here I am masters in computer science doing COBOL-based work. But anyway, the company saw my work and I became a database manager very quickly. And database manager was considered a very, today's, you can say, chief technology officer type of job. Extremely well-paying and great job. At that time, we tried to Americanize ourselves, but my wife and we felt that America is not the place. Even though we had a green card, we felt that this is not the place we are able to integrate ourselves with the American society. We made lots of efforts, but didn't succeed. So we decided to come back to India. So that was the time when coming back to India, even today also, USA is considered land of paradise, land of honey and money. Why would somebody come back here? But we decided, okay, we want to stay with the family, and very simple. No, frankly, patriotic feeling of "Ki dharti mujhe bula rahi hai," none of that side. Simply that we want to go back and stay with the family and be happy with it. So that's how we came back. Couldn't find a right business opportunity in the areas I wanted to be in. Then one of my cousins said, Harish, you take the flight tomorrow back to USA. You're not going to succeed here. I said, why do you say that? He said, here your competitor either would be doing customs chori, yeah, excise chori, yeah, income tax chori. When you do not know the input cost of your competitor's product, how are you going to compete? Unless you match that, which I know you're not going to do that. So that's where I realized I can't be in certain businesses where that was very prevalent. Then I thought of a technology business, because you can't bribe a jump instruction. You go and overtake, do it. So technology has to deliver a solution. And that's where, again, I had met one consultant, Mr. Sharu Rangnekar, and a similar but much smaller room, where someone said, here is a nut who has come back from USA. So he said, Mr. Mehta, welcome to India. You are in a first-class country with a second-class, sorry, you are a first-class citizen in a second-class country with a third-class administration. And yours and my job is to fix it. So there were people like him who were very inspiring and indirectly saying that you stay back. And so 99% of people were saying go back. But there were very few people like him who were saying stay back in India. And at that time, some certain policies changed, and I ended up entering the software business. Now, as a database manager, when I was in USA, let's say I was earning $28,000 per year. I could see that sitting in a cubicle in Mumbai, I can do the same work. I just needed a pipe to that insurance company's computer center, and I can do same database work sitting in Mumbai. Work from home, as we say, was possible. Work from home, meaning work from India too. I just needed that pipe, but there was no such pipe available. But that potential was there, and the labor arbitrage difference was 15 times between what I would get paid in India as a database manager versus what I would get paid there. So the labor arbitrage benefit was very apparent. Then there were surveys done which said that the total outsourcing market at that time was $300 billion. Today it is $3 trillion. I'm going back to late 80s or early 80s. The $300 billion, out of which what accessible to us was hardly $20 million, which is not there in that game. So, but anyway, what is called on-site consulting and what is called body shopping, that is a business we started with. And that took off very well. There were some challenges, but it was a very profitable business, and we could realize that this business is doable when you meet.
Can you request them to do the later, please? Yeah. So
Sorry, yeah.
So your decision to come back, as you were saying, 99% of your family and friends and colleagues thought you were crazy to do that, to come back to India. So I've speed read your book in the last 3 days. But one thing that struck me is when you were trying to convince your family that you are really back for good, you very dramatically took a scissors and cut your green card into pieces.
I mean, I had to convince them I'm here to come back to stay here.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm sure you could have got a duplicate green
Oh,
card.
no,
anyway,
see.
but that dramatic gesture.
See, I think the rule was at that time, in 12 months of living USA, you have to be back there once at least. Then your green card continuously renews.
Yeah.
Plus my boss who had allowed me to come back to India, he had an open offer. Because whenever you want to come back to USA, please tell me. I'll make sure you make all the whatever is required to be done. He knew my talents in terms of what I was doing for the company. So in the back of the mind, yes, there was a comfort, but idea was to convince everybody that we are here seriously coming back.
Yeah. Great. That I think is something, and now coming back to India is a very common thing because India is now the growth economy of the world. So a lot of NRIs are coming back.
But I'll tell you, till today, every time I land in Mumbai, I feel wherever I come back. Because if you see the poverty when the plane lands at the airport, at the Asalfa village, I'm so it is a thing which India has to change. But so that's something is always sort of inspires you to continue working what you are doing till that changes.
Okay. You are able to still hear us in spite of this background music? Yeah. So let's get to the crux of the matter now. So we've used the word NASSCOM a few times already. Most of this audience probably don't know what NASSCOM is and how it came about. So can you take us back to the 1980s of how NASSCOM came about and what is NASSCOM?
NASSCOM is nothing but a normal software association or any association. We are not different than any other association. The difference is the principles under which we operate. The business model that we have is very different than other associations. I'll come to that later. So I talked about $300 billion opportunity. We were hardly a few $1 million. We knew that if all these obstacles, see again, government or the policymakers in those days didn't know what is software. They had no idea what software is. So software is an intangible, as we just said, they had no concept. So, and I have few examples here. For example, you import software worth $10,000 on a floppy. The duty should be charged on what? $10,000 or on the weight of the floppy or the cost of the floppy? They would charge duty on the cost of the floppy.
You might have to tell them what a floppy is to begin.
Sorry. Floppy is again one media, like a magnetic media on which the software was sent. They didn't know what software is.
Yeah.
Now, when I would export software, the customs officer would ask me, give me a sample of what you are exporting. Now, what do I give him? Should I print 10,000 lines of code over 500 pages and give it to him? Or again, dump it on a floppy and give it to him? First, he said 10,000 lines. He just didn't understand what it meant, the intangible software and what is the project software development and so on and so forth. So finally, he said, give me the floppy. So I gave him the floppy. The first thing he did was he stapled the floppy on his file. Now, when you staple the floppy, it is unreadable. So this sample or evidence itself is lost. There was an excise case where we argued with the excise officer who had levied excise tax on software. So we said, it is not a project. This is a project. This is not a particular physical product on which you excise can be levied only once and then you're done with it. This is a continuous work. Plus, I don't know whether the customer will pay me. Is accepted. So how can I pay excise in between? This doesn't make sense to, and they were very clear, okay, project work or the works in process cannot have any tax. So we argued aggressively with the excise officer saying you cannot have a excise tax on software project development. He understood the logic. He accepted the logic. He said, okay, I'll make it zero, but don't challenge me on where I can put excise duty or not. The air you are breathing in, there also I can put excise on. That was the arrogance of the policy officers, policy making apparatus in India, and still there. Because they believe they are the ones who are running the country and whatnot. That's what Mr. Chandru Rangnekar said, third class administration as a challenge for us to work at it. So they didn't know what software is. Okay, on top of it, we as a business people, it was called socialistic license Raj, where profit was a dirty word. So you are looked as a crook only by the policymakers. So they were not ready to listen to your even arguments about any change that you recommend. And we had a list of 100 regulations of what we call physical world applied to the intangible software world, like the floppy and what. And I can give many such examples where it was just impossible to, in sense, do business or grow business. We're spending a lot of energy with the in compliances and whatnot. So we felt the only way we can solve this challenge is by forming an association, because as an individual, they don't trust you. As an association, at least they will talk to you.
Yeah.
And there were some 30, 40 companies in India who were doing software services business. And we sat together and worked out and said, we'll form NASSCOM as a software association to get started with. And what we did was we looked at other associations, CII, FICCI, SOCM, IMC, Alliance, Rotary, studied their constitution, their models, and we say, what is relevant for our industry? So we decided few do's and don'ts. And one of the don't was, we will not bribe for any policy change ever. Now, it was a very hard decision at that point in time to have that courage to, because every small thing people would like to bribe and get the job done. We said we will not do it. So that was our strong foundation we laid. And some regulations took 5 years, by the way, because of that, our attitude. It could have been done earlier, but we said, no, we will not compromise on our values. There was a major trust deficit between us and the policymakers. I'll come to some of those stories. Maybe I can talk about it, for example.
Yeah.
Mr. Vittal, I don't know, I mean, have you heard any of him? He just passed away 2 days back.
Yeah.
So he used to be one of the, you can say, reformist type of a bureaucrat in the government. And he took over Department of Electronics, representing our industry also. So the day he came in, he called a meeting of all the associations, hardware association, electronic component, and including software. So we had met before, and we said we will not go. Now he was like God to everybody, because even for your computer, you want to import one spare part, you have to go to DOE for an import license. So you can't afford to make an enemy out of him. But here we had a collectively the guts or the courage to say no to him. And there was a game plan behind it. So after a week, we asked for a meeting with Mr. Vittal. He was very upset. Why you didn't come first time? But he still reluctantly allowed us to go and meet him. And we told him, listen, we wanted to give you a message. We are not hardware. We are an intangible. All these regulations which you are applying of the hardware, you are plugging it on the software. And we wanted to give a message to you, okay, please do not see us as a hardware association. See us differently. He saw the value behind what we were saying. So he said, okay, what are your problems? So we had some 100 regulations. So he said, give me 3 to work on it. We said, no. You agree on one thing. We said, what? You will consult us wherever the word software appears anywhere. See, in those days, DOE was a nodal agency. What it means is any policy change regarding software has to be approved by this particular department. So every policy change would come here. So we said, whenever the change comes in, you will consult us. We said, consult you, but not accept your recommendation. We said, yeah, we will just tell you what our viewpoint is. You decide. Still, some bureaucrats argued, who are there? Why should we talk to business people? It's our sovereign right to decide the policies and whatnot. So who are there? He said, but they just think you listen to them. So anyway, you and I don't understand software. And here they're trying to explain to you proactively, why don't you do that? And that's how we started building relations with him. And we wanted export benefit because software cannot get a bank loan because there's no collateral on which you can take the money. So we thought export benefit would be the way to bootstrap the software business. So we and other industries were enjoying that benefit. So we asked Mr. Vittal to give us that benefit. So after 2-3 months, he came back and he said, Mr. Bimal Jalan, he was the finance secretary. He has agreed to give you the export benefit, subject to you do $400 million export this year. At that time, in 91, 92, we were at $150 million. He said, you do 400 million. Now, at NASSCOM, the 40 companies who we had started, also one thing we had decided when we started NASSCOM, that we would represent 80% of the top line of the industry. We will not start till we have the 80% top line, because otherwise what was happening in other associations, they come up with the policy recommendation, and then after 3 days, one other group will go oppose that. So they were all confused. Why are these groups of business people fighting amongst each other and not instead of helping, supporting, they're going different viewpoints. So in our case, Mr. Kohli of TCS at that time was not agreeing to join NASSCOM because we were a startup. And he, or as a Tata Group had at that time 70% market share. At 30%, we realized we would be no one. Another some small local association doing few things here and there, but no national impact. So we delayed forming NASSCOM till we had 80% voice. Till Mr. Kohli agreed, which gave us the 80% top line. And that's how we started NASSCOM. So when this $400 million question came up, we all sat together and we said it's impossible. Maximum we can do is 200. First of all, the benefit will take 3 years before we really putting it up and gearing up and then driving it. So, and that time I was the chairman of NASSCOM. I went back to him and said, sir, we can't do 400 million. He said, you don't want the benefit. No, sir, we want the benefit, but not by lying, not by cheating you. He said, but here is a mate was another association of hardware industry. They have given a proposal, they can do $400 million in software exports. Why you can't do it? There was a Software Export Promotion Council, government body. They also had given a report if 400 million can be done. And who are you to say no? We say, I do not know who they are, on what basis they are saying. Here is the 80% top line of the software services industry, which we have. They all are saying they can't do it. If they have some other software companies who are doing it, please go ahead and do that. We have no issue on that. He saw through it. That built the trust between policymakers and let's say our industry. Once that trust was built, Vittal became so friendly. He took this 100 regulations, out of which 30, 40 he must have removed very quickly, one by one. He kept working on it. He went to an extent that in one of these public meetings, he said, you know what NASSCOM is? N stands for nuts, A stands for asshole, the next S stands for stupid, another S is screwball, C is, and like that, and M is last, M is for mad. And I am, Mr. Vittal is saying, I am a leader of this group. So that was the pride that we built, him being associating with our industry. So that's some of the background behind forming NASSCOM, some differentiators. Also, one big decision we had taken when we formed NASSCOM was two major differences compared to other associations. One was we would strengthen the secretariat. We will not, because not everyone is doing volunteering work. We all can spend few hours a week, but not beyond. Somebody has to be doing full-time work, and it's a complex work to be done. So we must invest upfront in strengthening the secretariat, which was not the case with other associations at that point in time. So that made a huge difference as we moved forward, because we have chairmen keep changing and all the happening, but the NASSCOM engine keeps running. It's a very strong, healthy engine which the secretariat runs it. Other one was ecosystem. We also realized that this business has a massive potential as $300 billion, but there are lots of challenges, no skilled manpower. We have no advanced, not advanced. Even the existing computers which are available freely in USA were not available in India. So if you don't have those computers, how do you develop skill sets around it? So there are lots of such challenges. So we were very clear that we need to invest heavily in building that entire ecosystem, now, which is very unusual.
Yeah.
But we said by design, we will focus on building the ecosystem. Now, when we all sat in the early days, it became all the fierce competitors from Mr. Kohli of TCS, Narayan Murthy of Infosys, Azim Premji from Wipro, and many other were all sitting together around a table. And I think because of probably not bribing, trying to build trust with the bureaucracy, honestly, straightforward, all that, and some other number of things which we did, which allowed these fierce competitors to start talking to each other, start collaborating with each other. We'll talk about that some later, how that differentiated us and how it added massive value to the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from that era as well. I can relate to how bureaucracy, we these days complain about bureaucrats and they not cooperating with industry. But that time was at a different scale. I mean, how many scooters will be made by Bajaj was decided by a bureaucrat sitting somewhere in Delhi. How many cars will be made in India? How much shampoo will
On
be?
scooter, you are saying you want to come to college to buy a scooter. It would be delivered when you are married and you have 2 children.
Yeah, that's exactly.
So it was a world of shortages in the, I'm talking about late 80s and not going even beyond. You want to eat fruits. Your parents will say, go to Kashmir. I'll take you to Kashmir to eat the fruits. There are no fruits available in the country.
Yeah, I mean, with the scooter, it exactly, my father was had a great foresight. He booked a Bajaj scooter for me when I was 12 years old, and it arrived when I went to university at the age of 19. Perfect timing. So it took 7 years for my scooter to arrive. These days, you can walk into a shop and drive out with a scooter. Don't even need to walk into a shop. They'll deliver it to your home in 30 minutes. So that level of bureaucracy deciding every aspect of your life, what you will buy, where will you go, how will you work, where will you work, was complete. So in that environment, someone like Mr. Vittal sounds like a very breath of fresh air. Like he understood industry, which most bureaucrats didn't understand, even hardware industry, let alone your software industry, which they didn't know, and they kept stapling your floppy disks.
Plus, with Mr. Vittal, once he opened up and we were very explaining all our problems, he realized, we told him that we as an entrepreneur, if I am doing business in Ahmedabad, I had a city regulation, I had a state regulation, and I had central regulation, all sort of going after me. And we needed a breather. We didn't want all these regulations for us to be, like every small thing be bothering us. So we told Mr. Vittal, we need to find a solution to this. So after 6 months, he came back and he said, I've got a solution. And that was called STPI, or Software Technology Parks of India scheme. Under that scheme, a building can be classified in a city as a STPI building, and that building will not have any of the city, state, central regulations applicable to it. And he'll give us a pipe, which is what badly needed for communication pipe. So hundreds of startups, entrepreneurs took birth because of that STPI scheme. So as an industry, in early days also we believed in like technology converts scarcity into abundance. Similarly, we believe very strongly that in the theory of abundance in general, like 300 billion or whatever, huge pie available for the market, for this us to grow into. So we said we should build the ecosystem, let ecosystem open up. That means not only we can grow, but we'll allow hundreds of new companies to take part. And all the fierce competitors were agreeing to such an approach, which is not true in other associations. They will not, talking about giving birth to youngsters and other companies, it's just a no. They just want to protect their own stuff. To them, they already created wealth. So wealth preservation is their focus. To us, we are hungry and we wanted to create wealth. Yep. Very different approach to the similar problem, let's say. So we focused on, STPI scheme normally would not have probably approved as such, but we welcomed it. And that became a game changer for industry and for India. A large number of STPIs all over tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities, all over the country started coming up and started building the software-driven businesses.
Yeah. So looking at timeline, again, many of our students here were not born then, but when we think of economic liberalization in India, the date that cropped up is 1991 with Narasimha Rao and Manmohan Singh, and the great liberalization that happened in that year and continued for a decade after that. But NASSCOM was formed in 1988, 2 or 3 years before that great liberalization. So isn't that a bit upside down? How did you guys think that you could break free from regulation when the rest of the country was still living in a license permit Raj? Wasn't it like backward?
Maybe we were naive, maybe we were young. We said just jump in and do it. Frankly, we didn't have any, what do you call, visionary thinking of saying we'll be able to do it. We had no idea. But we were together and we were working at it. And we were seeing successes here, there, small ones and whatnot. It took till Mr. Vittal came in, we started getting the bigger successes. 91 reforms did help. I'm not saying no, but that's okay. I mean, that was one of the, we had seen many inflection points in the industry's growth. So that was one of the inflection point, opening up in certain areas like RBI and ways of working. And so at least this reform started having trust with the business person. That was the probably major contribution, which we were already working on with the government.
Yeah, which probably explains your use of the word maverick, because mavericks mean like unorthodox, unconventional people who think outside the box and don't believe in rules and are a bit crazy. Were you that at that time? Were you a bit crazy to think that you could do it when the whole country was still stuck?
We were crazy then, we are crazy today also. No, but let me clarify, but this is maverick effect, okay? So let me explain the maverick effect. It is maverick that you talked about. They working together collaboratively, solving the problem without personal agenda, with keeping India first, where the creative juices flowing to solve the problem. And that's the maverick effect. Now, I'll tell you a couple of stories here. There was a time when multinationals were asked to go out of India. They were, whoever had 100% equity ownership in India were asked to reduce the equity to 40%. So many companies left and many didn't come and all that. When our industry started in the late 80s and we started working for these multinational companies, they were so happy. So we had again IIT Madras, IIT Bombay, the best of best Indians, so-called, were working with us. And we are doing substantially low-end work. And we're doing excellent work. So they were very happy with the work which we were doing. So they came to us and said, we would like to set up 100% back office operation in India. Would your industry support us? So in our executive council, we started discussing, should we allow or not allow? Now, stopping them is the easiest thing to do. Asking for protection, government will fully support you. But when we started talking, first, of course, there were concerns that these MNCs will come, will pay double the salary, take away our best people. Even the business we do with them, under the garb of back office, they'll shift business, they'll start doing it themselves. So we will be left holding the bag. So the big, real major concern. But on the other hand, because of that trustworthy environment which we had built internally, somebody said, no, but our biggest, we are all homegrown companies. We don't have a standardized quality processes, infrastructure services processes, and X, Y, and Z. We all can learn if they come to India. Plus, if we start building India Inc. brand, India is easy to do business with, this $300 billion, where many pockets are not being considered for India, may start opening up. So it was an enlightened self-interest over in that sense. We should support that. But then somebody in the group said, still not ready to take such a hard decision. So somebody in the group said at that time, I don't know who, but he said, whoever develops human capital of India is us, and who doesn't is not us. will these MNCs develop human capital of India? Answer was clearly yes. So we must support that. And we said even to an extent, Indian company is not us if they are not developing the human capital of India. Today also we use that as a basic guideline when we can't decide between say 51 and 49. We fall back on this guideline to take the decision. So now, then we again went around, asked everybody, Kohli, Murthy, do you agree? You want to allow your fierce competitors to come to India? They all agreed. So we went to Dr. Manmohan Singh, he was the finance minister at that time. He said, sir, we are recommending allowing 100% ownership to MNCs. So one of the finance officers said, "Wapas desh ko bechne aa gaye." Because they were scared. They had this colonial mindset. East India Company came and then they took over the whole country. So by allowing these MNCs to come in as a back office, again, these MNCs will make inroads. But then we were ready with facts. Yeah, somebody even said, "Tum kiske dalal ho?" And we were ridiculed. How can you, they were unheard. How can an industry come and say, allow their competitors to come to India? But we were ready with our data analysis. We presented that. He agreed. Now, today, that segment of what you call MNCs back office, which is now called GCCs or Global Capability Centers, there are 1,800 R&D centers in India, employing 1.2 million high-end software engineers, doing $38 billion of exports. And not only that, some of these R&D centers are now representing at the board level of their parent company. They're co-creating future for their parent company. The massive change has come in just by having that single decision where fiercely competing competitors came together, collaborated, and took a business, not keeping the personal agenda ahead of it, keeping India first, and going ahead with it. So that's the power of, that's where the NASSCOM major differentiation is. And that is what I call this fierce competitors or fierce mavericks coming together. I call it a maverick effect. And that is the bend. It represents each software entrepreneur of the country.
In that context, a word that you've used a few times in the book, I don't know whether your group coined the word or it existed, I have not researched it, is co-opetition, which is cooperation and competition put together into one word. That in those days, even today, companies are at cutthroat competition. And even though there are industry associations, there's always infighting and always each company trying to outsmart the other and going through back channels. So how can you explain to us what is co-opetition, or how do you pronounce that, co-opetition, which is, I believe, a word you made.
Co-opetition is same as collaborate and compete.
Collaborating and competing coming
that
together.
That is the co-opetition.
Yeah.
That was the term coined in USA.
Okay. So how did you avoid all the competitive bit and make sure that they collaborated?
This happened 30 years back, so I don't know, but I have a habit of writing personal notes. So I reconstructed the stories from those personal notes. And it says that when you attend the meeting of NASSCOM Executive Council in those days, people wouldn't talk. Everybody was scared. Industry was small. Then I'm scared to say anything about my company because if by mistake I tell them I have this problem with this customer, all of them will go to that customer and I lose that business. So there was a big internal fear of talking about issues at an industry level. It took us a couple of years to learn to communicate. You require a mind shift. When you work, when you are inside the company, you work is one way where everyone reports to you or you are reporting to somebody. It's a very different mindset versus here, you're all peer-to-peer and you need to carry everybody. So how do you do that? And how do you communicate at that level, at the industry level? So you need to talk about the trends and have the various different ways of communicating it. So that time I was trying to figure out how to solve this. So that time I read this, came to know that Europe, when they became one, There was this gentleman, Jean Monnet, French economist. He brought the fiercely competing countries like France and Germany on the same platform and ended up creating Europe. So I said, what is his secret sauce that he created this? And from those learnings, partly I would say, we implemented in what we were doing. Don't worry about differences, for example. Just worry about the common problem, just remain focused on that and solve that. If you solve that, everybody would be happy. And then it will build strength. Okay, yes, together, collectively, we can continue to do that. Today also, I mean, TCS, for example, throws 50,000 crores cash on hand every year. Still, they are a member. Still, there, Mr. Krishnan was the NASSCOM chairman last year. They do see value still in the NASSCOM as a independent platform representing India. So that's the value we had to create. And we had to constantly be watchful that we keep creating value for our members to be useful to them.
Yeah. So, and the other thing that I knew it from my personal experience in those days, but you've explained it. There's this sentence, I'll read it out. I've copied it from your book. In the 1980s and 1990s, the IT industry's annual bandwidth diet must be what a teenager today burns through in a weekend. So you were creating software here, your 40 companies put together, and trying to sell it to your clients in the US. And all you had was at best a 64 kbps pipe to send that data from here. I don't think most people in this audience even have heard the K. We start with M and mega and giga and tera and so on. So all you had was a 64 kbps line through which you sent all this data to your clients in America. So how did you even think that you could surmount such a huge problem where you were creating megabytes and gigabytes of software and you had a pipeline which was counted in kbps? Anyone here uses a kbps connection?
Do you know what the kilobyte versus megabyte, gigabyte? See, okay.
So that was, I mean, very brave of you to think that you can make software here and send it over this tiny little pipeline to the other side of the world.
Let me try to explain. This is a good question. Somebody asked me this kind of before. So, see, when we had, how many of you heard Sam Pitroda? So, okay, he was the telecom czar. And we went to him. We said, sir, we are seeing this huge export potential for our industry. But what do you think we should do? On-site, sending our people abroad at the customer site and working, or we do work in India? Where again, you're much lower cost and we can do it. So of course you should do it offshore. You don't have to do on-site. But to do offshore, we need a pipe or we need those computers. How do you do the work for them? Why don't you give us a pipe? Pipe meaning a communication pipe from my center to my customer. It's one telephone line or one, whatever pipe may be, where I can send my files back and forth when I'm doing customers' work back in India. He said, but I don't have a budget. And went into 15 reasons and he didn't give us a communication pipe. So we are left with no option but to send people abroad and do the work. Then we were doing the reverse of that. In a sense, our engineers would bring the data on a floppy or some tape or whatnot, fly down to India, then do all the work, do the testing, whatever best we can. Then the team of developed testers would go from India to the customer site and do it. So it's a very Mickey Mouse way of solving a problem. But that's how the outsourcing is. How do you solve a problem? Ultimately, you come up with your own ways of doing it. Now it was taking away our margins dramatically, so much additional cost. But we had no option.
Yep.
So that's how we realize the need for a pipe.
Yeah, I think they'll fix it. But yeah.
So anyway, so that's how the speed that was available in those times those days. And I don't know, you don't know probably, but today, connecting, let's say, Mumbai to New York, when you communicate, how do you communicate? You communicate basically using a submarine cable. That fiber has been laid from Mumbai to, let's say, Dubai, and Dubai to next station and next station.
Yeah, maybe you can use that for the time being till that works again.
Yeah, okay. So there is a submarine cable which goes around the world. Comes Singapore, Chennai, Mumbai, and then that cable didn't exist for India. There was a cable going from Singapore directly to Dubai. India could not afford foreign exchange to pay for its share of that cable. So you were left with either satellite link to communicate with the customer, or you have a telephone line. Now, telephone lines are the most unreliable because we get cut. Now, if you want to send small file from place A to place B, today you may use Dropbox or WeTransfer, and you can send the file across. There was no such facilities. So we had to use this telephone line, but then line breaks down. So again, you restart. Sometimes we used to take 6 hours, which should have taken only 2 minutes because of the unreliable communication line. So we needed this pipe badly. And that's where when a proposal came to Department of Telecom, there's a whole story there where the CME-V cable, that is Southeast Asia, Middle East, another cable was being laid. We said India should not miss this golden opportunity. We must take part of it. Now, on that link, and there was one Mr. Singhal, like Mr. Vittal, he really ventured out, and we had no foreign exchange. Based on our industry's future foreign earnings, he took the risk partly. Because I will pay this $150 million as a foreign exchange. I will earn, he told the Ministry of Telecom. And that's how he got the sanction to, he approached the consortium of all these multiple countries. They say, yes, we'll give credit to India and all that. We worked out too. So that gave us what we call 64 kb link. 64 kb link, reliable, was sufficient to do our work. So we didn't need gigabytes of data. We needed a reliable 64 bytes. And that's how Devang Mehta, who is from here, he had coined a term, Roti Kapra Makan, Bijli, and 3 megabits of bandwidth for every Indian. 3 megabits of, that time the Minister of Telecom asked, okay, bandwidth kya cheez hai? He even didn't know what bandwidth is. But we had to make the point. Okay, we need communication facilities. Now, since they didn't understand what bandwidth is and what we need, why this would be very useful to our industry, how do you convince them? So once we met Mr. Shammi Kapoor, the Bollywood star, who was given a gift of a first Apple computer in India with the first internet connection called World One. And as you all know, he's a great storyteller. So we asked him, would you like to be our celebrity icon to represent us? I said, of course. So we took Shammi Kapoor everywhere, to every departmental government offices of electronics and telecom and VSNL and all those associations and organizations who were involved in framing the policy for telecom department. And then finally, we got these lines through. And once that happened, another major inflection point for industry to grow.
Yeah. Shammi Kapoor was the social media influencer of the day before social media.
Yeah.
He was great at PR and communication, of course.
We used to go to department and they were not interested in telecom or bandwidth and all that. They were only interested in listening to Shammi Kapoor, shaking hand with him, taking photographs with him.
We are kind of running out of our time and we need to leave some time for the audience. But before we do that, so we've talked a lot about the past and what to many of our audience is ancient history, 1980s and 1990s, before most of them were born. But that time I can understand NASSCOM was needed for a fledgling industry, and no one in the bureaucracy and policymakers didn't understand what software industry was, what is software services. So a body was needed to educate, to lobby, to advocate as an advocacy group. Now that that industry is kind of a world leading industry at $150 billion worth of exports, etc. Is NASSCOM still relevant? Now the industry can stand on its own. Does it need a lobbyist?
Let me answer differently. About 10 years back, I think, China wanted to compete with India in tech services business. They saw India's success. Now India can do it, why not China? And you know, China's muscle and the money power and their will to go after it, very difficult to dislodge them. So they appointed foresters, one of the research agency, to develop a master plan, how China can become number one in tech services business. Now, Mr. John McCarthy, who was the CEO of that foresters, he told them, this is the story he told us. He told them that you cannot compete with India till you create NASSCOM equivalent association. What is so big about NASSCOM? He said, I have not seen anywhere in the world, IBM, Capgemini, Accenture, TCS, Infosys, Wipro, all sitting together around a table, the creative juices flowing, keeping India first, no personal agenda, and solving industry issues. So that shows the model's power of collaborate and compete that is working. And now look at today's environment, the generative AI. Who is going to guide the government? I would love startups to have an association like NASSCOM, but they don't yet. So government comes up with their own in whims and fancies policies. One day RBI issued a fatwa where they made all the cyber entrepreneurs criminal overnight. 3 days or 2 weeks back, government came up with 28% GST on gaming industry. Now, most of these decisions are taken by the policymaker because they have no input from the industry. So they get concerned about, worried about some negatives and certain abuse, and so they come very hard to control it. But they don't get the overall perspective view. So if you look at generative AI, has a lot of negatives. So NASSCOM was the first one, about 3 months back, came up with the guidelines for developing responsive AI. We are hoping that these guidelines will be used by corporates when they buy, for issuing the guidelines internally, how to develop a responsive AI, or government when they buy AI projects, they'll put those conditions so the responsible AI is being followed. So like that, various places, these guidelines would be hopefully applicable. And who has developed these guidelines? Again, all the the leaders of generative AI, from Microsoft, Google, they're all part of our team, including Indian teams like Fractals, who are the leader in AI and ML. So they're all part of it together. They develop these guidelines. And this is just the beginning of the newer technologies. You still have quantum to CRISPR to whatnot are going to come as we move on. My sense is exactly the opposite. Okay, you need 10 more NASSCOMs in the country who behave like the way NASSCOM is behaving. Because we should be the one in partnering with the government, drive the policies going forward.
Okay, so you mentioned AI and generative AI and so on. So one, media in general likes to kind of scaremonger and create that AI is coming and everyone will lose their jobs and we'll. But on a more serious note, not like not blowing up the issue like media often does. AI is AI is writing a lot of code. There's this whole no-code platform development, which is like whole platforms are being developed without coders actually sitting down and writing 10,000 lines of code. So will there be a software industry a few years down the line, do you think, which employs human beings?
My sense is it will be bigger than where we are today.
Okay.
If there is a fear on the negative side, I have an optimism. So I'm a techno-optimist. I have seen a snake charmer's country turning into a global tech powerhouse as we all see today. And I've seen how we overcome all kinds of problems and challenges that came along the way. And yes, there are certain areas where we have to be concerned and they will take away jobs, no question on it. But on the other end, it's going to improve your productivity so much. I myself use ChatGPT every day. So if I can see my productivity going up, it will help across. That means it will, every time new tech wave comes, it opens up whole host of new applications to be developed. Existing one has to be reimagined and re-optimized, and the new ones have to come in. There is a transition period, but that's all. That is the normal cycle we have observed, and I see no reason where the ChatGPT or AI or generative AI would be different.
Yeah, great.
I mean, I'm not an AI expert. I'm just saying more as a technology optimist who sees this.
But looking at the history of how
No,
every
okay.
time a new
From
tech-
the press media, I just totally wrong. They shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
We are at $2,000 per capita. We have to go to $10,000, $20,000 per capita. Do we worry about those? Even if a few jobs are lost, do we worry about that? Or we really focus on revolutionizing every industry in the country? That's an opportunity in front of you. Why would you give up that? And why would somebody throw in a spanner by way of controlling it? I mean, you have a phenomenal future to rewrite the future of India. So I wouldn't at all, I mean, in that sense, worry about, even if some industries, some segments are impacted, fine, that's the price we have to pay. But look at the overall benefit, massive.
Yeah.
I would like to say every Indian becoming digital savvy or AI savvy, frankly, other way around.
And that has been a cycle since the start of the Industrial Revolution 300 years ago. Every time a new technology came, there was noise in the media that people will lose jobs. Steam engine came and people will lose jobs. Yes, some horse cart drivers lost jobs, but then millions of jobs were created in the railways and so on. So every time a new technology comes, when the computers first came in the 70s and 80s, there was this huge trade union action in banks, telling banks, public sector banks, not to allow computers because their tellers and people will lose jobs. And it delayed the computerization of the banking industry by a decade. Correct. They didn't let computers go into banks. Absolutely. Because people will lose jobs. So there's always this scaremongering that people will lose jobs. Jobs get redefined and come back in a different way. Okay, I think we need
to add to it again, automation. It is the Western world that started automating, which created Indian outsourcing industry. We are a side product of their automation push. If they were not pushing automation, our industry would not have taken birth. Just imagine where India would have been. I mean, this year we earned $250 billion. We earn more foreign exchange than Saudi Arabia earns. The difference is in Saudi Arabia, money goes in one account, while in India, this money through hundreds of companies into millions of accounts. The industry employs 5.3 million people. Now, that kind of contribution, automation by the Western world has made it happen. We have created 5.3 million high-paying jobs, out of which 37% are women. 2 million women are getting high-paying jobs. Now, just imagine the money that they are earning, the financial freedom they have, how they are going to now build their next generation, what they're going to, how they're going to contribute in the society and the community. There is a silent revolution taking place behind.
Yep.
So, and if you look at the meritocracy industry brought in IIT Bombay's gardener's son becoming a software engineer. Have you ever imagined that? He didn't have to know someone. He had to know what he knows, appear for the test and get the job. Corporate transparency brought in by the industry in terms of quarterly financial reports and the annual reports. Just imagine the impact that segment has. The FDI money started flowing in. We built trust as an India brand. So the point is that once you allow all these segments to unleash, have faith in their entrepreneurship and their skills, there will be few rotten apples. I'm not denying it, but they will find ways to solve all these problems and move ahead.
Great. So your last word of advice, most of the audience here are young students, our students here. You have built organizations at an industry level like NASSCOM and your own personal organizations over the last 30, 40 years. And you've done that with conviction, with ethics. Like one key theme I learned from this book is, as you also mentioned, NASSCOM's steadfast adherence to ethics, no bribing, no under the table dealings, purely ethical. So those are all learnings for us on how business can be built without shortcuts and without breaking the laws. What else would you like to leave the students with who have ambitions of a journey similar to yours? Mm.
I would say 10% of your time now, or meaning once you join the company or start a business and whatnot, and you start after the first few years, you are at the peak of your career. Spend 10% of your time building the ecosystem in the industry that you are in. The way you are very passionate about making money and growing your own company exponentially, give 10% of that creative energy, not money, in growing the ecosystem exponentially, selflessly, without any personal agenda. And you will see, you will not gain dramatically over the years because the overall pie will grow, but the overall wealth, I would say, in a sense, democratize opportunities, democratize wealth. All that will spread into a more balanced growth for the country. So my advice would be that continue working beyond your own job, 10% of your time for the segment or ecosystem around you.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm sure many of you have questions. So if you can raise your hands, and there are volunteers who will bring a microphone to you. There's a question there, a question here.
Good evening, sir. When I grew up, Devang Mehta was a name synonymous with NASSCOM, and I would be remiss. I'm actually, this is the first part of the question. If you could narrate a story about Devang Mehta. And second question is,
There are plenty of stories, sir.
yeah, so
depending on how much time we have. Yeah, sure. Very happy to do that. Yeah.
And second question, which is the next NASSCOM, and especially in frontier cutting edge technologies, so that you see that we should, which is the next NASSCOM that we should keep an eye open for, that we should be dreaming of, or we should aspire our hopes at this is the next upcoming industry, maybe in quantum or other cutting edge areas. So thank you, sir.
Just to answer second one, if I understood your question correctly, the startups segment needs NASSCOM equivalent association. There are so many verticals and policymakers have no clue where the fintech is and where fintech should be going. What is fintech versus Bitcoin or crypto? There is no clarity. So that again, somebody has to put all these pieces together and guide both industry and the government. Same thing applies to gaming. Every segment is going through that churn. And the AI or generative AI is going to make massive impact again in all these segments. So if they're not together, we will see knee-jerk policies coming from the government. That's the challenge which we have in front. We need to figure out how do we solve that. Coming back to Devang, there are lots of stories I can tell you. He was 29 when he joined NASSCOM. And he was 39 when he passed away. Such a young age, he contributed dramatically. At the age of, maybe my sense is at 33, let's say, in order to build the ecosystem in India, he literally wrote the draft IT policies of 20 states. Can you believe that? Writing, and of course, we all helped him. But he was the face, he was the front end. He would go and convince the state government, you must have an IT policy, and then explain it. And he had a very smart way of presenting it. Some other day I'll talk about it. So that was one. The other is story I can tell you about him is a great sense of humor. So he would even say like Krishnamurti became Chris during early 90s when USA was the craze. Now India is the craze. So it's a Krishnamurti who became Chris is now Krishnamurti again. So that is the way he used to present. The big story I can tell you is about, this is another interesting story. We'll take a few minutes. I don't know how much time we have. Tell me when to stop.
We have another 10 or 15
Okay.
minutes, so
Yeah.
that's not a problem.
So in the late 80s or early 90s, when we would meet a prospect in USA, they would look at us as a thief. Because in those days in India, we believed in right to copy, not in copyright. So we realized that nobody will give us business if they think we are a thief. So how do you overcome that? So we looked at our Copyright Act. Copyright Act, no word software in it. Software was not even anywhere. So we said we need to get software in it. So we approached government bureaucrats. So one officer said, "Where is our Kohinoor?" The Tower of London. If Western world has looted us, it's our time to loot them. We must pirate. That was the mindset. Then another bureaucrat said, "We don't charge any royalty for Mahabharata or Ramayana. So why should the American software companies charge royalty? Why should we pay? If we had charged royalty for Aryabhatta invented zero, where would India have been today?" But so that was the mindset we were up against. Now, how do you counter that? Luckily, we had Mr. Vittal as a DOE secretary, and we worked with him. He understood the point, and he strengthened the Copyright Act, added software, and he also put a jail for a CEO caught using pirated software for 1 month. So we told Mr. Vittal, "No, sir, don't put him to jail. That's not our interest. You just take the CEO to the police station is good enough. You create that fear of God, then he will start using legal software." And then finally we settled it, I think 3 days or 7 days or something in the act. At that time, that act was stronger than UK. So that we started building India Inc. brand as a nation that you can do business with. But that was still not enough. So what does Devang do? He rents an elephant in Chandni Chowk. He collects hundreds of, floppy drive again, all those the magnetic, which were pirated software was being used. He puts them in a big dump on a Chandni Chowk area, and through the elephant walks on it, chopping on it. That became such a powerful visual that made an impact globally. Only he could come up with. I talked about roti makra makan kapda and 3 megabits of bandwidth. He came up with that word term 3 megabits bandwidth. He was a great marketing guy in that way, great communicator. And his famous story was to motivate all of you, like not you, but let's say youngsters, to join software industry. He will tell a story. If I have time, I can tell that story also about, and most of you may have heard it, that there is this sheikh in Middle East. He is dying, and in his will, he has written that my wealth is 17 camels. Half of my camels should go to my eldest son. 1/3 should go to the middle son, and 1/9 should go to the youngest. And after he passed away, when they looked at the will, now there's a 17. How do we give half? How do we give 1/3, or how do we give 1/9? So there he would say, an Indian software engineer was walking by, coming up on a camel. He saw this thick boy is very sad. He said, "Why? What happened?" He said, "We have a problem." "Oh, that's your problem." So it's okay. Take my camel in your pool. How many are there? 18. How many you want? Half. 9. How many you have to get? 1/3. 6. How many? Half. 1/9. 2. So 9 plus 6 plus 17. 1 left. He takes his camel and goes. So he would create pride as a software engineer. The Indian software engineers are very smart and very good. Anyway, so I think I'll just stop here.
Yeah, there. Mhm.
Hello, sir. Today's talk was very inspiring, and all through the talk, I heard you. I'm here.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes. I heard you mention about communication, how proper communication was needed to build the trust with the bureaucracy, also internally within NASSCOM. So if you have any more tidbits, tricks about effective communication and how that trust helped build the ecosystem that you also want us to continue. Thank you.
What is the question? First?
Yeah. Can you firstly stand up? Whoever is asking questions, can you stand up? So Mehta sir can see you.
Sure, fine.
And can you ask your question again? I don't think we understood your question very well.
Trust,
Yes, sir. You mentioned the importance of communication and building trust with the bureaucracy also, and also within NASSCOM internally. So I was wondering if you could tell us that how communication was important in building that trust, and what is the impact in building the ecosystem on the bigger scale.
I mean, it is absolutely critical that in terms of the communication has to be authentic. All that, I mean, the normal, I don't see no game playing, no manipulation. As a simple behavior in that sense of no ego coming in between. So that all you have to bring in to build trust. Like in the beginning, when our people were not trusting each other, we used to meet at night in a hotel room of one of the other co-founder, KV Ramni. And in his room, drinks will flow freely. Dinner will be freely, everything will be free. We will not talk business. All objective was to build trust with each other, or not trust, but relations with each other as a human being. Then you say, oh, he is like me and you, not different personally. He also likes this drink, or he also likes this dinner or whatever, and then other subjects that we talk. So people started opening up. Like Dr. Prakash Ebalkar of Tata Unisys, he called me once and he said, Harish, are you running a serious software organization or a social organization? I said, Prakash, they're not opening up. They're not talking internally. So how do we? So that was one of the such point you can say. Later on, we came up with a retreat where both spouses and the NASSCOM member, two of them will be invited, all the executive council members. We go to a place for 3 days. And only half a day is spent in a year, strategy for the year. Remaining 2.5 days, fun and enjoy. Only to build relations with each other. Once they started building relations and you start getting some victories, one after another, small victories, and then the large victories like export benefit came, and they see the value of that combined strength. And then it just adds, everybody keeps adding, but somebody has to still act as I call it a self-appointed conscious keeper of that group, keeping the discussion focused. Like I gave an example of MNC. Somebody said, whoever develops human capital of India is us. Somebody has to watch that. And somebody has to bring it on the table. And somebody has to carry the others. So let's say it's not an easy job, but it can be done. And we have done it, and it is continuing. Now the culture has been built, the DNA has been there. So I'll tell another story here, for example. The government took a delegation to Russia. So they taken a pharma association, they took software association. Now those two export potential from India. Now, when the time came for software association or NASSCOM presentation, NASSCOM president was Som Mittal. Now Som Mittal looked around and he said, normally he would give a presentation as a president of NASSCOM at that point. He looked around and he saw Harish Mehta, who was the chairman of NASSCOM and also chairman of Accenture India. He said, Harish is here, Harish should give a presentation. Harish looked around and he saw N. Chandra, or at that time he was the TCS CEO. N. Chandra, that's the largest Indian IT company. His CEO is here, Chandra should give a presentation. So they approached Chandra. Chandra said, of course I'll give a presentation. But then Som said, one caveat, what is it? In this presentation, 4 of your competitors' case studies are there because it's an India presentation. Would you give? Without blinking, he said yes. That's the trust that you build with each other. Everyone watches it. Oh, Chandra did this, Harsh did this, Som did this. So it becomes a sort of a culture in a way that's the way to behave inside NASSCOM. Keep no personal agenda. Keep India first. And you'll be surprised that when the Som Mittal read this story in this book, he says, Harish Bhai, I had even forgotten that. Okay, such a thing happened. But then it has become part of our DNA. That's why he didn't observe, because I did what I did. I just had to do it as a normal person. I mean, he was not carrying a big weight on his head saying, I'm doing it for India. He said, this is a natural thing to do. Harsh should give credit. I mean, so that not carrying all that, when everybody watching, seeing, and we, write the stories in the books, so it becomes still, continues to be guiding the next generation and the next generation. So that's how it continues. I hope I answered your question to some extent.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Quickly.
Hello, hi,
some-
sir.
yeah.
My name is Ritant and I'm part of the MBA program here. First of all, thank you so much for coming and sharing about your experiences, your achievements. My question is more towards the software industry. We have seen that India has, proved its value when it comes to software outsourcing, right? But when it comes to the software product industry, that segment, right, we've not been able to go global, right? Reach that extent like what has Uber done or what has Amazon done. So what do you think, or what are your views on this? What do you think are the challenges for Indian startups or companies to go global?
I was saying, for product development, whom do you go to?
No. How do Indian products, like say, if we have
How do
Zomato or
Indian
Swiggy,
products be like Google products?
yeah, how can we go global, or what are the challenges we are facing at this moment to go global? Like,
Again, this is a very different challenge altogether, different, frankly. I can only say that I am a service provider, let's say. Let's say I'm running an airline, as an example. You don't ask me how to build an aircraft. Building an aircraft is a product game, and running an airline is a services game. So there's two different, distinct business models. It requires completely different way of addressing each one of that. So the product is what you see in the Silicon Valley has to be replicated here. But don't expect services industry to put money behind or X, Y, and Z. Because that is not in their DNA to be in the product game. They don't understand. They will try here, there, a little bit. But to create Google type of product is a very different challenge altogether. But I'm hoping that with this whole new startup ecosystem, the way it is coming up, some of these success stories will come out. They're still not there because most of our stories are still India driven. But I'm hoping that will happen over time.
thank you so much.
Okay, let's move quickly to 1 or 2 more questions. We are kind of out of time.
So,
Yep.
so hi, my name is Ariman. So my question to you is that you mentioned earlier that you used to have meetings with all the bureaucrats of the country. So in today's time, how would you go and meet with them, and what's the way around in the office? Like, how do you please them and not offend them while you're trying to get something done?
How you used to meet bureaucrats to put forward the case for the industry. So what I think you're asking is, in today's time,
Yes.
how do we do that while still maintaining the ethics that you did in those days? Is it possible still to do such things?
Why would that concern be? I do not know. Because today, for example, NASSCOM is involved in like the DP, the data protection policy that came out. We were deeply involved right from the last 3 years. And every new, at least we, as an industry, we are engaged everywhere with the government. And there is no question. I don't think that's an old story now, ethics or bribing, none of that is, no bureaucrat officer is asking any of that now. They're very impressive people, they want to do something for India. They want to be proactively solving problems. My reaction is very positive. But I just don't know, because we are not together. We don't have a think tank. We don't have a thought leadership in many areas is where the challenge is. So like one policy officer told us that the startups are like Rajput warriors. They fight among each other and some third party wins. So that should not happen. Somebody represent Chinese money, someone represent American money as a VC, and somebody represent, and those monies are fighting really, not the entrepreneurs or startups. So there's a lot of, there are challenges that these segments have to come together to, but bureaucrats, I'm per se extremely happy right now. I would not say anything negative about them these days now.
Thank you, sir.
Like today, this morning, we met Mr. Vijay Nehra, IT Secretary, Gujarat. So impressive. Very impressive individual.
Yeah, he was the municipal commissioner of Ahmedabad a few years ago. Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Mm.
Okay, I don't know his bias. I'm
Yeah.
meeting for the first time.
Yep. Mm.
So you will see such people coming all over.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, maybe one more question here, and in the meantime, can one of you, Shruti, check if there's any question waiting online from the online audience? Yep. Where is the next question? Quickly. Anyone? Shruti, you wanted to ask a question yourself? Yep. It's covered. Okay. Yeah. So one question here, and then can we check if there's any chat, any questions waiting in chat there? Yeah.
So specifically, you belong from a generation who has seen the shift of time. And can I ask this
Sorry,
question?
can I just hold the microphone closer so we can hear you properly?
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Yeah.
I want to get one photograph of the group.
Yes, yeah. I think someone is taking photos. We'll send you some more photos also.
Sorry, yeah. Yes, please.
yeah. So you belong from a generation who has seen the biggest shift of time. Can I ask this question, that how you accepted and adjusted to that shift to remain still relevant till this date? Like we are seeing young entrepreneurs and young minds, and we have to, I mean, all have to, work together. How to remain relevant in the changing times?
How to remain relevant.
Changing.
So you are from a generation when you did all these things in the 1980s and 90s. So how do people of that generation still remain relevant today?
Yeah, like how do you cope up with changing times and still be, with the time?
Can I start that answer and I'll
Yeah,
pass it on to Mehta sir? You heard him say that he uses ChatGPT every day.
Yeah.
Now that is a sign of keeping up with the times. Like we started when there were no computers in the country, and he's now, so as we keep saying to all our students all the time, learning doesn't stop when you leave the university. Learning starts when you leave the university. So education is not ending when you get your degree. The degree you just frame and put it on the wall. That's not education. Education is a lifelong process, and you have been educating yourself every day. So that was just a prelude, but you answer.
You can answer better than what you answered in that sense. Continuous learning, but that curiosity has to be inside you to do it, and you need to budget time to do it. So you have X, Y, and Z choices. So I'm not active in Lions. I'm not active in Rotary. I devote that time for some of these learnings, for example. But then everyone has to make their own choices of what their areas, their passion, where what it is and where they would like to learn about it.
Anything online?
There is one
Sorry.
question online
Oh.
by Dr. Vemuri. He's saying that with this creative kind of generative AI and other AI, ML and all those things, do you think degrees like MBA and BTech and all those things, they're contributing nothing, they're just giving the education? So will they become redundant going forward for the kind of jobs that we need? That is what he's asking.
So the knowledge part will become redundant. There's no question on that part. It's all there, and ChatGPT has everything. So you will have to, like somebody said, I'm in one of the ChatGPT group of NASSCOM. So one person said beautifully, he said, 90% of my job is now taken over by ChatGPT. But the 10% of time that I have, I see we'll grow 100x. You have to figure out that 10% of yours, how it will become 100x. So yes, so all this work of our reading and documenting and summarizing and putting it together and all will be done by ChatGPT. If that can do it, why do you want to do it yourself? I believe it will open up your mind in terms of we'll have more time for creativity, imagination, curiosity, all that. Those skills we'll have now time to hopefully shine. But your job would be to channel your own energies around it when you are free. You may want to go and watch Rocky and Rani. That's a different thing. So your spare time, where do you spend? How do you spend? That will decide your future. So there's a big change coming in for everybody.
Yeah.
No question on that part. And how do you embrace that change?
So I think there are no more questions. We are also running out of time. So I would like to say thanks to everybody and thanks to you. This is just the beginning of their semester.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just wanted to say, sir, that this is the beginning of the semester. First 2 weeks they have been, and it is a great opportunity for us to meet you. I mean, this was just by chance. Now I would like to invite Professor Amadhar Singh on stage to just facilitate you. We have something here. So, sir, if you can.
And after Mehta sir leaves the auditorium, he'll be at the book desk outside the auditorium door. If anyone is interested in looking at the book or. Okay.
Please tell us who they are.
Yeah, that I'm sure the volunteers have a record of
Yeah.
that. So
So, sir, if you can be there because somebody is taking photograph as well. So, okay.
I can size his message. नहीं है कुछ भी अगर ठान लीजिए और रहीम का था कि करत करत अभ्यासते जड़मति होत सुजान रस्सी आवत जात पर सिल पर पड़त निशान. So this is the gist of what Mehta Sahab has told us, and I feel so proud that I have the chance to meet him. And so on behalf of Ahmedabad University, sir.
Thank you, sir. So thank you so much, sir, and thanks everybody.